All right, guys, I am back. If you're wondering where I was sick. I had all the plans, all the well-laid plans of mice and men to record an episode this last Saturday, about 6 days ago, and COVID said, fuck your feelings. Fuck your feelings, fuck your plans, fuck your life. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I was sort of hanging out, taking it easy, and then like all of a sudden like my throat started hurting, and I was like, word, that's different. And then next thing you know, I just was like sweating, then I had fever, and then I lost my sense of smell, which has been interesting because for like 2 days I was thinking, wow, like my deodorant is working really well because I smell amazing. And then I was talking to one of my friends who'd had it, and she said, have you lost your sense of smell? And I was like, I don't think so. She was like, go get a bottle of perfume and spray yourself. And I literally sprayed my perfume like directly on my shirt. Nothing. I sprayed it in my face, which I would not recommend you do that. It was incredibly dumb. Nothing. It was like I was misting my face with water. Yeah, so so all of that happened. And it's not been a week yet. I'm still a bit on the mend, but I just I'm tired of laying around all day, so I figured I'd hit the podcast. I will tell you that, like I said, my symptoms have been relatively mild, and it's because of horse paste. Okay, let me backtrack. There was an episode that I did. I think it was called like random observations, and then like I start that episode. I took it off the YouTube, just because I just didn't want to deal with the bullshit. But I start the episode talking about like just what was going on around us, and then I like towards the end, I talked to people. I mentioned on the episode what I intended to do, and ways that I've sort of read about to treat this thing, and I mentioned ivermectin, and a couple of people proceeded to tell me that it was horse paste and that it was for animals. First of all, no the fuck it is. It is not horse paste. Is there a horse version? Yes. Do they test medication on animals that people use on a daily basis? Yes. They test their shampoos on animals. Is there a human version? Yes. And on that episode, I even, put it in the description, if you like, ask your doctor for a prescription. So a prescription would not be available if it did not come in, something that could be consumed by human beings. There's a fucked up part. The news knows this. Like, if you just hit up Google, no, fuck Google, go on DuckDuckGo and search enough, you'll find that this medication has been used for like 40 years. They know the side effects. They know that it has some anti-parasitic effects, and that it has been found to lessen and mitigate the symptoms of this thing, of a viral infection, period. And it is being used in other countries, like I said in that other episode, as well. And it's not the horse version that's being used. It is the medication that is available with a prescription and comes in pills form, right? So the ones that I have and I took were these tiny, they look like little tiny beads, and they kind of just fall apart in your mouth. And I also mentioned in that episode, there's a COVID protocol. You can find the episode. I'm not going to like rehash everything. Just jump towards the end. The episode is called, I think, like random observations or something like that. If it's not painfully apparent to you at this point that motherfuckers are just straight up like lying to people, just shitting on the truth, playing fast and loose with the truth, and that literally you cannot trust anything anymore. I'm not saying trust me. Fuck it. Don't fucking trust me. All right. Like, don't. But don't trust them either. They've even turned the idea, like, people used to say, which is do your own research. Apparently that's like a fucking joke now. Like, I'm seeing on social media, people making fun of people who say they do their own research. Why is that fucking funny? So reading is funny now? Or like challenging mainstream narratives when these people have been proven to lie over and over again? That's hilarious. Thinking for yourself? Ha ha ha. You're a fucking idiot because you don't just believe everything that you've been told. What is going on is straight up just a psyops. Like, I don't even think psyops is a strong enough word. It's insane. It's insane. And you see it or you don't. If you don't see it, I doubt you to listen this far. If you do see it, just keep your head up. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, actually a couple friends of mine, around the same topic. One of my friends being my cousin. And we kind of talk about this stuff all the time. It's like, if you see things happening, and do you try to... We were having a conversation yesterday about heroes versus villain, and he decided that him and I are now nemesis because apparently I'm a villain, which is fine, and he's a hero. And I said, I don't know if you want to be the hero, because the hero literally has no freedoms, which is what we're going to be talking about in this episode, by the way. We're going to talk around it. The hero has less freedom than a villain. I've been playing with this idea for a while. I'm not saying that I want people to be villains. I want you guys to just sort of think outside the box, and think about what it means really to be free. What it means really to have anarchy, the definition of anarchy. When I say anarchy, what most people think about is like glass on the streets, broken windows, fires, like that shit. But once again, that idea is something that they're programming the masses with. Anarchy means without leadership, and meaning without archy is leaders, without leaders. And what they want people to think is that a world without rulers would be that world where there's fire on the streets and shit like that. But right now, I'm living in a state without any rulers. I'm at home minding my own goddamn business. And my house is not, in a state of disarray. I managed to rule myself fine without some elected or selected individual telling me when to brush my goddamn teeth and use the bathroom. Right? We rule ourselves fine. When you go to the grocery store, right? And everybody forms in a line. We all kind of know not to cut in front of other people. We rule ourselves, right? If somebody just decides to be a wise guy and head to the front of the line while everybody else is queuing, the rest of the people in the line will say, hey, you need to get your ass back in that line, right? We don't need the police to get involved unless the person obviously starts acting violently, but that doesn't typically happen. So we can rule ourselves. If you're at a stop sign, you know what I mean? 4 people, arrive at the same time. People know what the fuck to do. Like, they want you to think that without them, we are animals. Without civilizations, we are animals. There's a book. I've read several books during my COVID-mandated vacation. And I'm going to give you the list right now. Civilized to death. Every time I open my goddamn Audible, shit cuts off. The first book that I read is Civilized to Death. If you have not read it, it's by Christopher Ryan. I would implore you, I would beg you to read it. It's an amazing book. because it takes everything that we have been taught as far as like what we think of as progress, right? Like the way we live, we seem to think that, oh, well, we should be grateful for, science and technology for getting us where we are now, right? And the author takes that idea and just defecates on it, just rips it to shreds. And he's just, I can't do it justice. He's a brilliant writer. But he basically says, like, first of all of the problems that society is sort of, the technology, I should say, is being touted as solving are the same problems that technology and society, the civilization caused in the first place. So viruses, for example, the reason why we get sick is because of domestication of animals that we had no business like fucking around with, right? So mankind, before the development of agriculture, just sort of hunted and gathered, right? It was, women had more rights, for example, because there was no real need to really dominate anybody, right? You lived off the land. Whatever nature provided was what you consumed. And as a result, the feminine was venerated. So even when you look through history, you'll see like recurring themes of, the sacred feminine. Our modern anthropologists look at that and they call all of these goddesses fertility goddesses because, God forbid, women want something more than just to have fucking children. Like, anyway, I'm just gonna leave that alone. That actually is now in the present being challenged, that all of these goddesses weren't all fertility fucking goddesses. Like, it's just a bastardization and a total, complete, it seems intentional misunderstanding of the purpose, I should say, even just rewriting of history, of the purpose that these goddesses served, or who these women were before they even became goddesses. There's a lot that has gotten sort of lost in time, or just intentionally reinterpreted in a way that serves a particular narrative. But Christopher Ryan, in the book, just like, if you don't end up looking at your life and everything in it and like being like, yeah, I knew shit was not okay, and now I know why. Even like the idea of war, right? The fact that just everything that's fucking wrong with society, and the fact that we're programmed to believe, oh, we're so fucking civilized. And that mindset in itself is racist as fuck, because it's saying that people who live with nature, right, who live naturally, who aren't getting up in the morning and fucking killing themselves, right, working 9 hours, a day or whatever, sitting in traffic for 2 hours of their life, just sitting in a fucking car, right? Those people who are not living in that way, somehow we're better than them, because we're living this like cycle of just like, oh, hey, let's see if we can consume as much shit as possible that we don't need. So our food's fucking killing us, because even the foods that we eat aren't fresh. They pick this shit while it's still like raw, and then they spray it with chemicals so that it ripens, or it pairs ripe when it's sitting nice and pretty on the shelves. That is what we gave up. We gave up the taste of fresh fruits with all the vitamins that your body needs, and we gave all that shit up so that we can have iPhones and television, I guess. I don't fucking know. I don't know what the trade-off is. But yes, so, what is the argument to that? So people will say, well, like we've got, medical care now. Okay, cool. Thanks for, what is it? What was the last time they cured anything? I guess antibiotics, which came from mold on a plant. So that wasn't necessarily like science in the sense. It was like an accident. They just kind of stumbled across it. And that's okay. Not shitting on antibiotics, clearly. But it's not to say that shamans and, other healers in more natural cultures don't have their own sort of medicine that would, I would argue, even rival ours. So throughout this like week that I've been, dealing with this whole thing, aside from the ivermectin, I've been taking grapefruit seed extract, which is just an extract from a grapefruit, natural. Turmeric, which obviously is turmeric, right? This is spice. White willow bark extract. It was what Hippocrates suggested as a pain reliever thousands of years ago. Taking that. I never once took Tylenol. My fever came down. I never once took Motrin. None of that. I took the ivermectin, and only just because, hey, I got it. Might as well try it. You never know. The grapefruit seed extract, and even as I've been blowing my nose or, coughing, everything that has been coming out of my mouth or my nose, TMI, has been completely clear. Completely clear. I'm like crystal clear. Trust me, I've been checking. So that's from the grapefruit seed extract, just killing all that stuff. Didn't have to take antibiotics. Not once. Okay? The turmeric and the white willow bark, the curcumin, things like that, that's for inflammation. You want to keep inflammation at bay. Yeah, that has been remarkable. I don't think that there's anything like remotely inflamed about my body. I've taken so much turmeric. Obviously I followed the RDA on the medication label. So, and I'm not a medical doctor. So obviously take everything that I'm saying right now with a grain of salt. I'm not claiming to be an expert. This is anecdotal. I'm just sharing my journey. Okay. What else did I take? Cordyceps, turkey tail, wormwood. These are all plants. And less than a week, and my voice isn't as strong as I want it to be, but no fever. I did lose some weight. I look fabulous. I got like this nice ab thing going. Like, yeah, I might actually start doing some crunches. I'm liking that. Start doing some curls next week. So that's been nice. But I wonder if it was all, the turmeric, because I'm telling you that gets stuff moving. And I'm not going to say anything beyond that, but holy shit. My system is clear. That's what I took. Now, if I were in a natural culture, I would imagine that a medicine woman or a healer probably would have recommended more or less the same thing. I took ashwagandha, that's Ayurvedic. That's more just to help myself sleep. Because I was like, everybody was talking about, they had like no energy. I could not go the fuck to sleep. Like, I was like reading books while laying in bed, just wide awake. The only things that I had really was just like the headaches and the body aches and like my throat was sore. That was it. And of course a mild fever. That was basically it. But it's all natural. So, there's that. A lot of the things that modern medicine cures is also, or at least attempts to cure. I don't think they cure anything. I mean, at this point in time, you can't say that there's a cure for anything. They haven't. They haven't cured cancer. They haven't cured the common fucking cold. I mean, let's be fair. Let's be honest. SARS-CoV-2 is basically the common cold. And the common cold is a coronavirus. That's what it is. But obviously like hyped up because the shit came from a lab, which is not a conspiracy theory anymore. They straight up said this shit, and it did feel man-made. Like, it felt unnatural. I absolutely, this is not a conspiracy theory. I don't wish this on anybody. It did not feel like, I don't typically get sick. This was fucking weird. It did not feel like my body, like, instinctively you're just like, what the hell? This is not right. That's how I felt. Like, this is not normal. This isn't right. So Civilized to Death, he does a better job of sort of explaining and breaking things down, as far as like just the origins of the term even civilized, right? And the whole bullshit label of the noble savage, where that came from. Apparently, when the Europeans arrived to the States and they integrated with the indigenous people here, a lot of the people did not want to leave the culture of the indigenous people. Like, a lot of the children, they preferred to live like the Native Americans. So much so that I don't remember who the guy was. He was a fucking asshole and a racist. He came up with the term noble savage in attempts to sort of denigrate the culture of Native Americans, to basically make living amongst them, because they were losing a lot of people to their culture. There's another writer, I can't think of his name right now, but he wrote about this as well. What is his name? Dang it. Let's see, hold on. Let's see if I can find it. But he wrote about this as well. Mitch Horowitz. I believe the book was The Secret History of America. I'd recommend that. But a lot of that was happening, where Europeans were abandoning Western culture. This whole sort of like greed and, essentially like consumerism that drives the barbaric nature, really, that pulls out the barbaric nature of mankind. We are taught to sort of believe that the way we live now, right, is normal and healthy, but it's not. It's a corruption of how we're supposed to be living. And we are living in a system that's perpetually attempting to program us with the idea that this way that we live is the right way, by denigrating other cultures, by saying, fear them, right? Fear that, right? That fear living like that, fear living off the land. What's wrong with living off the land? Are you happy? Is anybody fucking happy? No one's fucking happy. I think people find their happiness where they can. But if you sit and ask people, and you expect them to be honest. So you ask honest people, are you happy with your fucking life? With this living, paycheck to paycheck, this kind of like life? Most people, if they're being honest, would say no. And I think that's leading itself to this sort of sense of like existential nihilism that's like really coming to a head, right? We're looking around and we're seeing shit happening. We're inching towards midnight and nobody gives a shit. It's like the collective is a little suicidal. I'm laughing. It's not funny. I just laugh at inappropriate things. The collective is like ready for this shit to be over because nobody likes this shit. And the reason why I'm recommending Civilized to Death by Christopher Ryan is because it's a different perspective to say that, look, this has always been an issue. It's not us. It's this way of life that has been imposed on us. That has always been an issue. Can you live differently? Short answer, yes. I had a random thought pop into my head. I'm going to go on trust. I'm going with the flow. I had a random thought pop into my head the other day. It was like, Joe, you're so intelligent and striking and talented, all right, and well-spoken, articulate, all that other, good writer. You're blessed with all these talents. Imagine you have all of these gifts and nothing comes out of your life. Like you do nothing with your life. How would that make you feel? Imagine all of this and you still fail. All of these gifts and you still fail. How would you feel about that? Now, you know that is that shitty voice in your head that just be saying shit just to like fuck up your day. And the way I realized that I've changed a lot is that when I heard this thought, I believe they're called like invasive thoughts or something like that, I laughed because I thought it was fucking funny. And the reason why I laughed is because I'm not writing this goddamn story. Like, none of us are. And I've long come to terms with that. And I kind of dance around the issue. You know, sometimes I speak about it directly, about free will being an illusion. Excuse me. About determinism being like a thing. That everything that happens is determined. I mean, you might have some free will. And I think the analogy that I used is one that I borrowed from somebody whose name I don't remember, is you've got the same freedom that a violin has to move around its case. So every once in a while, there, you know, even predetermined, the behaviors of like atoms and subatomic particles will randomly move like in a chaotic way. And you could argue that that's where you could say that, you know, some free will happens. But overall, the fact that that happens consistently just says that little movement of chaos is also programmed in. So that you feel like you have some free will, but it's not. You know, it's like a dog in the house. And you have a little doggy door, so it feels like it's got the freedom. Look, I can go out and in whenever I want. Okay, cool, but like you're still, you know, like you're still a dog. There has been an immense amount of freedom and peace that comes with accepting that. And a lot of people keep fighting. I don't know, just accept it. Like you're everything that you're experiencing now is caused by events that happened before you were even like born. It's just a series of cause and effect. If you can't change the past, then you can't change the present. If you can't change the present, you can't really change the future. All right? Unless you try to live super consciously, but even that, limited. It's limited. So this thought came into my head. You have all these talents and imagine you still fail. And of course I laughed. Why? If I fail, I'm not in fucking control here, clearly. So if I fail, it has nothing to do with me. If somebody, whoever it is that created me, or wrote the story to my life, or decided to create me the way that I am and design me the way that I am and bless me with all these talents, and somehow they fail to create the right circumstances for me to be able to succeed, that sounds a lot like not my fucking problem. Like I've done everything that I needed to do that was within my power, right? Except for when I'm not feeling well. Obviously, I do my podcast. I write. I do the TikToks now. I paint. I haven't been able to paint the last week. It's annoying as fuck, but I'm gonna get back to that. It's not like I'm just sitting on my ass, right, and not doing anything. And the same goes to you, by the way. Like, apply the same idea to you. If you're doing everything in your power and you still don't achieve a, quote, modicum of, quote, success, and I'm saying that with air quotes, it's not your fucking problem. Like, it's not. Right? If it's meant to be, it'll be. And once again, like who is defining success? Every time I finish a painting, I consider that a fucking success. You know why? I have ADHD, bro. Like, do you know how hard it is just to get downstairs and focus on a painting every single day for like a month? That's success. All right? If nobody beyond, you guys listening to me, ends up knowing who I am. I don't give a shit. If the whole entire world ends up knowing who I am, I don't give a shit. Because at the end of the day, like, who cares? Okay, so let's say Bob Ross. Bob Ross, some would consider him a success, right? And up until this month, like, when you said Bob Ross, it was like, oh, cool. It was that guy that painted. He was cool. All right, great. He's dead. Like, it doesn't matter to him if you know his name or not. He's dead. Yeah? So when I'm dead, I don't give a fuck if people know who I am, because I'll be dead and, like, reincarnated into some God knows what, like, hopefully a whale. I don't fucking know. Or a wizard in a parallel universe. I like that too. So it wouldn't really fucking matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care. You know? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. How I'm supposed to do it. And that's all that matters. Same with you. You define, and I know this sounds so fucking cliche, but it's true. You define. You are not a slave. You're a master of your own life. So you define what success means to you. You really got to start challenging these ideologies that have been clamped in our brains to get us thinking about things in ways that don't benefit us. There are cave paintings that are remembered today, but the artists are forgotten. Does it matter? I'm just doing my part to contribute something. And not to the entire world, but to the people who will come across my stuff and it just brightens up their day just a little bit. Seneca, the younger, one of the most brilliant minds, I think, to ever exist on in this plane, in this reality. If you say his name to, an average person, they would not know who the fuck he was. He wrote letters from a Stoic, mind-changing stuff, life-changing stuff. He was a great man. He was an advisor to some Roman ruler. I think it was Nero. That motherfucker had him killed. Fucking idiots. Throughout history, it's always the dumbest fucktards that end up ruling. Most brutal. It's never intelligent people. It's because intelligent people overthink shit. And they don't want to rule and dominate other people because they're intelligent and they go like, who am I? Like, what gives me the right to rule over another person? I'm just a regular person like them. It's always the brutes with the overinflated egos that come through and start trying to tell other people how to live their fucking lives. Fuck you. Anyway, Nero had him killed. But his words stayed for 2,000 years somehow. You can get them now, you can read them now. And they can change your life, even if just a little bit. Are you going to be able to get 7 well, let me backtrack. Would the world be a better place if 7 billion people were made to read his works, letters from a Stoic? Absolutely. Is that going to happen? Absolutely not. Right? It's not, unless you decide you want to be a fucking tyrant and you want to find a way to dominate every single person on this planet, which there are some individuals who are at the moment trying to do that, which is madness. But of course, once again, it's always the mad ones who feel like it's their like they're the heroes. This is why I have an issue with heroes. They're fucking dangerous. The ego that you have to think that you can save the world. In order for you to save the world, you would have to force people to behave in a way that they may not want to behave. You would have to essentially impose your will on other people. That is literally every single person that has caused great levels of genocide and suffering on this plane, on this existence, in this reality, have been assholes who, with overinflated egos, who thought that it was up to them to save the world. Let people live their fucking lives. That's not gonna happen, right? So, yeah, if 7 billion people read Letters from a Stoic every day, the world would be a better place, but they won't. And that's okay. I don't know, the world is the problem. I think we keep getting, the reason why I think I posted a video, it's my second to the last video on my TikTok, where I said, if you pause and examine life, you realize that we keep thinking that there's some sort of dystopia ahead, like in the future, that we need to take steps to avoid right now, without really recognizing or acknowledging the fact that literally every moment in history is a fucking dystopia. I said it before, I just like saying it, because it's true. Yeah, we're in a dystopia right now. It's not something to be sort of like avoided in the future. We're in it now. You got to kind of wake yourself up from that. And I think the question people need to be asking themselves is, am I doing anything right now to prevent things from getting worse? And if your answer is no, that's okay. You thought I was going to say, oh no, like you should go. I have no right to tell you how to live your goddamn life, dude. Live your life. Now, if you are the kind of person that is actively going out of your way because you want to believe in something so much, because you believe in something so strongly that you're willing to, and you're advocating the violations of other people's rights, particularly what they should be doing with their bodies, go fuck yourself. We're all prisoners here, bro. Like, we're all inmates here. The problem is, inmates, there are other inmates that are dressed up as prison guards. And then we're just sort of like going along with what the fuck they're saying. Yo, you're just, you have no authority. You're just wearing a fancy coat, bro. Like, question everything. Speaking of experiments, hey, remember that? I think it was a Milgram experiment where they said that they went to like prison and they took all these college students and they had like, wait, hold on. I think it's two different experiments I'm thinking of, but there was this one experiment where they said that like human beings would just keep shocking people because an authority figure told them to keep shocking them, like shocking a person. Remember they taught you that? They certainly taught me that in my psych classes. Turns out that's all fucking bullshit. I think of like the 24 cases that happened. It was only like one case, right? It was just like one subsection of people that did that, and that was what they chose to focus on in order to use that as an example to say that human beings will just follow authority. Is a lie. That's a lie. Everything that we have been told is a fucking lie. So let me say that again. That experiment where we were told that if you give people like a shocker thing and you tell them to hurt other people, they will just shock a person almost to death, simply because an authority figure told them to. Turns out that's not true. It wasn't true. It was a lie. It was a lie. Yeah. I just found that out, and I was annoyed also. And also the prison experiment as well. That was also not true. Like, it was first of all, it was not like repeatable. And two, they just focused on the negative, like on the small instances where people did behave like that, where they, abused other inmates who were dressed as prisoners. So the prison guards allegedly abused the prisoners. Turns out that didn't quite happen either. It was like a small group of people that behaved that way, and that's what they chose to focus on in order to prove their point. And that is what we're taught in school, that is what we're taught in college, and that's what is used to sort of support this idea that without rulership, right, a system of anarchy would be essentially human beings just brutalizing each other. You will find information in Civilized to Death by Christopher Ryan. Read it. I beg you. The other book I read this week so far was Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. I like saying his name, Dostoyevsky. Dude, it's dark and I love it. I love it. It's one of his shortest books. I was going to maybe try to tackle Crime and Punishment, but ain't nobody got time for that. I would recommend that you read that, though, especially like even if you just read the first half. I think you'll enjoy it. I want to read something to you. It's all about civilization and morality today. So I'm going to read something to you. Gotta take deep breaths sometimes. There we go. Okay. This is from Notes from the Underground. Reason is an excellent thing. There's no disputing that. But reason is nothing but reason. And it satisfies only the rational side of man's nature. So say that again. Reason satisfies only the rational side of man's nature. Obviously, man has more than one side, right? While will is a manifestation of the whole life, of the whole human life, including both reason and impulses. Okay, so he's saying that will trumps reason. Will is a conglomeration of both reason and impulses together. Okay, we live in a society that has elevated reason above all else, right? So we have scientists that say, trust the science, right? Let's do everything that's reasonable, do the right thing, follow the law, right? And these are the rules, and it's all about like what makes sense, whatever that means, yeah? And what he's saying here is that there's more to man's nature than that side, right? That rational, logical side, that civilized side, okay? And that needs to be addressed. And when you ignore the impulsive side of man, you have problems. You cause problems, okay? Now, let's go on. Here, I quite naturally want to live in order to satisfy all of my capacities for life, and not simply my capacity for reasoning, which is just 1/20th of my capacity for life. So once again, he's saying, I am more than just my ability to reason. Right? He's speaking to the dual nature of mankind. I'm going to delve into that a little bit more. He said, what does reason know? Reason only knows what it has succeeded in learning, and some things it will never learn. So this is a poor comfort. This is true, right? Say that again. What does reason know? Reason only knows what it has succeeded in learning, and some things it will never learn, right? So the basis of our society right now is we trust those who know things, knowledge, like they've read it somewhere. And if I say something to you and you go, well, how do you know this? And I say, intuitively, I feel this. Most people will discard what I have to say because it's not something that I reasoned. It's something that I intuned. And we don't value intuition in the society, which is stupid, because intuition is actually deeper, more potent source of information than head knowledge. I can't tell you how many times I've just intuitively known to do something and it ended up working out, even though it challenged what I knew at the time. Intuition just works faster. That's just one of the few things that composes and comprises a man. Intuition, reason, right? Knowledge. But there's also the unconscious and then the subconscious as well. But we live in a society that elevates reasoning, that elevates knowledge. And disregards everything else and makes a man, a woman a woman. When I say man, I mean mankind. Okay, so women obviously included in that as well. I'll go on. Human nature is a whole, and everything in it must be considered, both the conscious and the unconscious, as I just said. Now, you may tell me, I'm reading on, that the man of the future will not consciously desire anything disadvantageous to himself. So what he's saying here is that we think that as we continue to progress, right, and become more civilized, in quotes, yeah, eventually we will be able to remove anything that is disadvantageous about being a human being, right? Remove all our impulses, remove our, what they call our reptilian mind, right? Our instinctive behavior, rage, right? Passion, love, anger. Their scientists are working towards a way of making mankind more reasonable, more civilized, more controlled. That's what they want us to be, right? Because the more controlled you are, the more civilized you are, right? You walk a certain way, you speak a certain way, you dress a certain way. It's like man is a dual animal, right? It's a god and a beast. I have this video that I wanted to film for TikTok, and I said man is a titan chained to a beast. Yeah, but there's another book I read. I know you guys like getting the books, so I just want to pause and share that with you. It's called Denial of Death. Very interesting. I don't agree with everything the author has to say, but it's worth a listen, worth a read. The author basically says, like, mankind we're animals. That's what he says. I don't agree. Because once again, he's doing the thing where he's like ignoring the non-corporeal nature of man, spiritual nature of man, right? But that author, I forget the author's name, doesn't matter. Denial of Death is the only one. There's a big skull on the cover, but he's doing what he's essentially accusing people of not doing, I guess, which is essentially like he's failing to acknowledge, or he's just ignoring the fact that there's more to humanity than our animal nature. I mean, if we're mere animals, then why are we the only animals that intentionally clothes itself? If there's something else going on, we're dual in nature. But he does what he does say, and he has some thinkers to support his argument, is that mankind is also sort of weirdly disgusted with the animal nature of itself. And it is our scientists are taking steps to rid ourselves of this sort of animal nature, right? To make us more tame, more civilized, more refined, which is crazy, right? Why would a beast seek to tame itself, right? Unless it's something more than that. You don't see a dog saying like, oh man, like I gotta like, I don't know, I gotta like walk myself with this leash kind of thing, right? Like unless the dog is disturbed, which is what I'm arguing. But we carry on back to Dostoyevsky. So back to the quote. For now you may tell me that the man of the future will not consciously desire anything disadvantageous to himself. Right? So that's the idea, that we hope that in the future, right, in the perfect world that we're heading towards, right? The future is a utopia. I laugh. We hope to be so civilized that we will no longer behave in bestial, animalistic ways, right? No more anger, right? We will be tamed, easy to control. That is what our scientists are moving towards. They say that we are to be civilized, and they will find ways, maybe Neuralinks, medication, to remove those aspects of ourselves. Shit's unhealthy. But there is one case when man may consciously, purposely desire what seems irrational, perhaps what may be considered stupid, simply in order to have the right to desire for himself, even what is irrational, to have the freedom not to be bound by an obligation to desire only what is sensible. I'm going to say that last part again. To have the freedom not to be bound by an obligation to desire only what is sensible. Do you ever like meet a person where like they have their whole entire lives like perfectly neat and controlled? They do the right things. They say the right things. They got a good position, job. Everything seems like their life is perfect. Everything just seems like they're really, on top of their shit. These are rational, logical individuals. And then they just do some shit to blow their fucking lives up. And then you're just like, yeah, what the fuck? Why did you do that? That is what Dostoyevsky is talking about here. When you control people, yourself included, when you have so many fucking rules that are meant to control people, yourself included, eventually, just so, and I'm going to say that 99% of people, when they do this, aren't even aware of why they're doing this. It's that, remember I mentioned that moment of chaos that I said it's just like the freedom that a violin has to move in its case. Unfortunately, that moment of freedom where a person goes, you know what, I even if my freedom that I am attempting to exercise is the freedom to destroy everything, at least I did it. Which I'm not saying that that's what you should be doing. I'm saying I'm bringing this shit to your attention so that it doesn't rule your life. If you're so fucking controlled, if you're living a life that literally you just feel like I've got to do all of the right things, I got to be a success, I got to wake up in the morning, I got to, like that, like you're that fucking controlled. There's a certain aspect of yourself, all right? Like while you're aspiring to be a god, right? To live like, to be as perfect as possible, which by definition is you're aspiring for a godhood. You're still in a beast. And you are suppressing that beast. And if you keep that thing suppressed, eventually it will lash out at the least opportune time and cause you to behave in the most irrational way at the worst possible time. There's a thinker, Gurdjieff, and another P.D. Uspensky. I always bring them up. They talk about the many eyes of man. And I think in a couple episodes past, I also mentioned a relatively recent writing, I think book by the author is Jeff Hawkins. It's about I think it's called 1,000 Brains or something. He basically says the same thing that these philosophers had said like decades ago, that man is comprised of more than one entity. Right? They're all saying the same thing. We're not singular entities. Okay? You can aspire to be perfect all you want to, and you can aspire to be civilized all you want to, but eventually you see people snap. You see people who like who just kind of want to see the world burn. They want chaos. Because the more we keep living like this, controlled, right? You can't say that. Isn't that the thing? That's what's hot in the streets now today, yeah? Right? Everything. We're getting more and more controlled. You can't say that. I can't. I was going to start this episode talking about how this whole weekend my back felt like I was being stabbed by a bunch of midgets. And I didn't say it because I was like, well, that's not politically incorrect. Although, when I was thinking midgets, I wasn't thinking like little people. I literally was thinking like tiny, like goblins with swords, because that would make sense. I mean, little people are just like small, like they're just dwarves, right? They're just small people. In order for that analogy to have applied to them, I would have to have been like 16 feet tall, at least. I just didn't know how else to express that. I felt like I was being stabbed by tiny, aggressive, like creatures, and midgets seemed to fit. But I know I can't say that, right? Can't say midgets, because it's offensive to little people. Even if I didn't mean it, and I'm not, like, I like the word. I like the way it's, I like the way it sounds. And I'm not, in my head, I don't want to use it in terms like to apply to a little person. I just like the word. And I in my mind, I've created like tiny goblins, and I want to call them midgets, but I can't, right? Because I would get canceled. So I didn't. I was also going to talk about why we do retarded things. But then I didn't want to use the word retarded because that's an offensive word. Even though I don't mean it like against people with special needs. I mean retarded like when you're very capable, but then you just do retarded shit, which I do all the time, right? But I couldn't say it because then I would get canceled, right? So we throw a whole entire person away because people can't take a fucking joke. I'm laughing. I think it's funny. Listen. The hypocrisy of it all is ridiculous to me. I mentioned Bob Ross earlier when I said you can live your whole life and die, and your whole legacy might be remembered, but you can't control what people say about you. And sure enough, I think about a month ago, if you would mention Bob Ross, it would have just been the guy that does a painting and he says, look at the pretty trees. And he, that was cool. Now there's some weird Netflix special talking about Bob Ross, greed and whatever the fuck. And it's like, yo, leave him the fuck alone, right? And I'm not going to watch it because fuck whoever put that together. Like it's titled in a way to essentially like bait you to click. Right? This character that we, have seen, like this sort of like he seems like a very perfect, very sweet guy with his afro, and it's really nice. But then you put it in the title, A Tale of Greed and Vengeance or something like that. And yes, it's meant to trigger like an emotional response. So you click it and then watch how this person was imperfect. I know he was fucking imperfect. Why? Because he's a fucking human being. And I don't know about you, but I've never met a perfect person in my whole entire fucking life. So that just goes without saying. Do we really need this? Is this something, right? And then I saw a TikTok where this girl was like, this is why I have no heroes. You know, I used to look up to Bob Ross when I found out he cheated on his wife. Mind your own fucking business. Right? Like, were you in a situation? What does that have to do with his art? So you admired a person until you found out that they were a human being, right? And that they made mistakes. It's not like he like hurt children, right? Or like ate people. I mean, I can understand that. That's fair. But he did what, I'm sorry, like let's be real, a lot of people do in relationships, because monogamy is not healthy or fucking normal. I'm sorry, it's not. It's not. That's a whole nother podcast. He messed up. Do you villainize an entire human being because they were human? Are you perfect? You've never made a mistake? Why are we doing this? Why is this happening? Why are we, I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about it again because shit's fucking weird. Why are we becoming judgmental assholes? I don't give a shit if he cheated on his wife. I don't care. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. I have no fucking right to judge anybody. I was listening to Schopenhauer last night. In case you want the title is, here we go, where is it? The Wisdom of Life, Counsels and Maxims by author Schopenhauer. I hadn't listened to him in a while, and I needed to fall asleep. So sometimes when I can't sleep, I will listen to an audiobook. Then I actually couldn't sleep because I was actually listening to what he was saying, so I'd turn it off. And sometimes I'll actually just play an audiobook while I'm sleeping because I want to absorb the information as I sleep. I'm a weird cat. He said life is suffering. Existence is suffering. Which is true. I mean, it's true. And I don't know if I have the right. I can't speak for other people. Look, if you are so much better than everybody else that you can judge, right? You're just living this life that's just like greater, right, than everybody else. So then you have the right to judge away. But me, like, I don't know if I have the right to judge other people for finding different ways to deal with their pain. A person who, from what I've seen, it's not like he was like a sex maniac, right? This dude was in a relationship and then he like cheated on his wife. But clearly, to behave in that way, he was in some sort of pain. And a lot of the mistakes that humans make, a lot of the actions that humans take are twofold. One, largely our unconscious drives to stop pain. And two, largely our subconscious exercises of will, just to say, you know what, like, fuck it, like, I at least, I can't live like this. I there's so many rules, it's too much. I just want to do this thing. And fuck the judgment. Hello? Who am I to judge someone's path? find temporary reprieve from pain. That is life. People keep telling me I'm dark. Yeah, I am. I am physically dark as well. So what? I mean, I smile and I'm bubbly and I tell jokes. Life is dark. Hello? Are you paying attention to like everything? Life is dark. I have the right to be dark. I have the right to be imperfect. I have the right to be what I am, which is a dual creature. I am not a god. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I don't want to be in control of my ego. So sometimes I will cuss a motherfucker out. It feels good. And that's okay. One of my favorite philosophers is Osho. I think at this point I've read or listened to all of his lectures. And every time I had mentioned him to people, they would say, oh, he was this and he had this commune and didn't he try to like kill people or like poison the water or something like that? And my response to that is, I don't fucking know. From what I've read about it, none of us were there. There's like two opposing stories of what happened. It seems like the people he was surrounded with, there was this one lady that was kind of shady, and he was just like such a like non-judgmental person that he like just was like not able to see her for what she was, kind of thing. And she was just a little too intense with her passion to share his message. And he spoke on it after the fact. But that said, do I throw away all of his insight and all of his wisdom and all of his lectures because of that? Nah, data is data. I am not the one. Like, no. You take the good with the bad. Everybody is dual here. This is not heaven, guys. I don't know if you guys missed the memo, but this is not heaven. I'm not saying this is hell, but this is not heaven. There is a great courses on Friedrich Nietzsche that I would strongly recommend. Another book that I have read this week. The title is The Will to Power. It's a great courses by Kathleen somebody. The font is really small and I don't want to click on it. I would suggest that you will check that out, the lectures out. Particularly the later chapters where he discusses slave mentality, slave versus master mentality. The professors do an amazing job. I've only read Ecce Homo so far, which is not a good book to start with. If you're trying to read Nietzsche, terrible book to start with. I would recommend that you start with this great courses if you're interested in Nietzsche at all. In the later chapters where the authors, she and he, are discussing slave mentality is mind-expanding stuff. You see, we have to be mindful of how we elevate authority figures. They don't deserve our elevation. They don't deserve our respect. These are power-crazy assholes who feel like it's their right to tell us how to live our fucking lives. They're not chosen by God, right? This is how kings had ruled for ages. They say, oh, they were chosen by gods, or they're representation of God. Okay, cool. You're just some fucking dude with a lot of money and weapons. And you're bullying people into subservience. But you're a human being who shits and pees like the rest of us. Sits on your bony ass like the rest of us. You cannot levitate. You cannot fly. You cannot summon angels. You're just like us. You're just in a fancy outfit. And now I'm supposed to venerate you? Fuck you. You don't have the right to tell me how to live. No one has the right to tell you how to live. No one has the right to tell you how to live. If you're not hurting anybody, no one has the right to tell you how to live. That's really, all of these laws that we're just getting increasingly shoved up our asses are unnecessary. We need one law: do no harm. One law, that's it. Do no harm. And hold everybody accountable to that, from the individual to corporations. All this everything else is bullshit. Right? Some of the most harmful entities on this planet are corporations. And they just do shit 3 steps ahead of the law before the law can come through and kind of stop whatever it is that they're doing. And they do that shit intentionally. Because they know, bureaucracy is slow. If you only had the one law, and you can say, look, this company is being harmful. You're harming the planet. You're harming people, right? Pharmaceutical company, you're harming people. Okay. Go to jail. Right? You're harming the environment. Okay. Go to jail. Just one law. Do no harm. Everything else is bullshit. Nietzsche talked about how the idea of morality, in particular in the Bible, came along, and it was born out of when the Israelites, the Jewish people, were slaves. And what they did was they looked to those who were their masters, who were rich, who lived life the way they wanted to live, right? They were not monogamous, for example, just ruled themselves. And they looked at them and decided that, okay, well, we have no rights, but we do have the ability to judge and say that the behavior of the masters are immoral. And because we are better than them. So it was like a weird sort of reverse psychology thing where even though they were slaves, they wanted to feel better about themselves. So they flipped the narrative. And then they just basically said that everything that their masters were doing was immoral. But the problem is that everything that masters were doing were basically things that a human being would normally do anyway. Right? Like seeking wealth became money is the root of all evil. Okay. Or consuming alcohol, which I don't consume alcohol. But that became, okay, you're drinking alcohol to excess, that's a sin. Which is what the masters did. Or, gluttony, right? They would consume food. This was the ancient Romans and Greeks and things like that. So then that was a sin. But a lot of what was labeled sin was things that the sort of, quote, animal nature instinctively did, right? The animal side of yourself, right? Instinctively did. Lust. That is natural. Lust is fucking natural. But it's a sin. So anything that you would naturally do, any behavior that you would naturally exert, became immoral. And it was almost like, well, they couldn't do it because they were slaves, So it's like, well, I can't do it, but I don't want to do it anyway. And in fact, you're going to hell because you're doing that. And my God is more powerful than your God, and he will punish you for living this kind of natural life. And that's where morality came from. If you actually sit and ask yourself how we define, what is moral and what is immoral, right? Anything having to do with sex, anything having to do with eating, right? Or consuming, right? Think about all the things that the Bible, for example, says you cannot eat. Things that you like wearing makeup. Like there's a lot of rules that people aren't aware of, that they're violating all the time, and they consider themselves Christian and better than other people. But if you actually look at the book of law, that is the Old Testament, there's a lot of shit in there that Christians are violating on a daily basis. And it's there for this exact reason that Nietzsche took and broke down. But you're not a slave. And they're no longer slaves. But the mentality is stuck. So much so that now, just being a human being is sinful. The fact that we're taught that a baby is born with a dirty soul is fucked up. I remember I had a pastor who told me I'd lost my little sister when I was 10 years old. She was 5. And I spoke with a pastor about it like years later. Like when I was like 14, 15. And I said, she was never born again. And he looked me in my heart and said, she's in hell. The Bible makes no distinction against it. If you're not born again, you haven't called upon the name of the Lord Jesus, you will go to hell. Looked me dead in the face and said that. That a dead child, a 5-year-old, is now burning forever in the lakes of hell. And he did not think that there was anything wrong with what he said. His mind is infected. I'm going to go back to Civilized to Death. Read that. The reason why I want you to read that is because I need you to understand what he says. And what he says repeatedly, and he provides the data, he backs it up with the data, is that human beings by nature are good. The fact that we've been led to believe that we are not is just another layer of control, another system of control. Human beings are generally good. You're not born with sin you can govern yourself. You know what's right and what is wrong. And what Nietzsche, or what they discuss in that Will to Power lecture, is that it's the same thing that Dostoyevsky talked about. When you're that controlled, you have all of these rules, you can't do this, you can't do that, eventually something's going to fucking give. And you're going to be like, fuck, and you're going to fuck up. And then guilt is going to come in, which is another issue that Nietzsche had with the issue of guilt. Guilt is you feeling terrible for existing. Right? I'm not speaking about people who intentionally harm people. I'm not saying don't, but when things happen that are beyond your control, or you indulge yourself in a way, or you lose control of the animal side of yourself, your ego, is it fair that you should feel guilty on top of that? where's the guilt coming from? It's coming from the fact that you've been programmed to believe certain behaviors are inherently evil. And here's the thing, if you were raised in a different society, for example, a society where it was polyamorous, you wouldn't feel guilty, right? Or in a society where people would like consume food and then throw it up, would you feel guilty? I'm not saying bulimia is a good thing. Okay, what I'm talking about is like the vomitoriums or whatever, which has, some people have argued were not a thing, but it was part of a culture. I don't know if it's true or not. But I was taught that it was part of a culture that I believe the Romans, they would like consume a lot of food and then they would throw it up. And to them, that was not immoral. So morality changes depending on the culture that you're in and the time that you're in. And you need to be aware of that, because are you allowing something to control your life that you think is something that is sort of like universal? Or is it something that has been imposed on you when you were a child and had no defenses against it? Which is what I talked about in the previous episode, the whole Matrix thing. You don't need anybody to govern you. You know not to be a dick. Anybody that's trying to tell you how to live wants to control you. And the problem with that is that if you have too many things trying to control your behavior, eventually you will do something chaotic. And the only person that will end up hurting is yourself. This happens over and over and over again. What I'm saying is, take it easy a little bit. Give yourself some slack. To be a fucking human being and not have to feel like you have to be perfect all the time and say the right things all the time and do the right things all the time. And also give other people a fucking break. And that you need to get it in your head. I know that we say all the time no one's perfect, but like really let that sink in. You're not perfect, neither are them. And the more civilized we get, the more chaotic and violent things will become. Because you're suppressing things that should not be suppressed. I'm not the only one who is saying this. These are facts. There's another book that I read on willpower. Let me see if I can pull it up before I head out. Where the author talks about if you spend too much time trying to essentially control everything, eventually you gotta get this like snapback. I believe it's called The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal. So bear that in mind. Try to live a more natural life. Being civilized and control is not natural. Turn on the TV if you want to see what civilization is. Civilization is getting up, putting up, your dress shoes on and a skirt, a button up, tie, driving to work, sitting in traffic, knowing damn well you could have done this shit at home. Sitting in a cubicle, surrounded by people you don't really like. Turning around, listening to your colleague talking about shit that you don't care about, but you can't say, look, I don't give a fuck. So you have to just sit there and listen, right? Just being polite all the time. That's civilization, yeah? You get to your car, sit in traffic, get home, change, turn on the TV, eat takeout, take a shower, brush your teeth, go to sleep, do it all again. For like 30, 40 years. Yeah. That's madness. That's civilization. being in control all the time. And then every once in a while you get that chaos where you're not conscious of what you're doing. You just unconsciously do some shit that fucks your shit up. You blow your life up. They call it midlife crisis or 7-year itch, whatever the fuck. Right? But I keep thinking of Bill Clinton. Right? Like, why you're president? Like, you wanted to do this your whole entire life. You really needed your dick sucked that much at that moment. Like, you couldn't, like, you really. But in the book, The Willpower Instinct, I believe the author even talked about that. It was like, yeah, when you are in control all the time like that tends to happen. It happens a lot. You'll see this even, like, pay attention. You'll see, like, a lot of people who, Jeff Bezos is one. Like, his life was fine, right? We had a lot of respect for him. And then, boom, this dude's sending, like, dick shots to, like, random women. Like, wait, what is wrong with you, dude? Like, but that's what happens. So either you control the chaos, either you control the moment of chaos and allow yourself some wiggle room, some breathing room, or the chaos will control you, right? The ego will kind of pull out. The animal side of you will cause you to act irrationally. Okay, I'm going to end with this. This is Notes from the Underground, Dostoyevsky. And yet we all know that those very people... Oh, wait, hold on. They are continually turning up in life moral and rational persons, sages and lovers of humanity, who make it their object to live their lives as morally and rationally as possible, to be a light to their neighbors, simply in order to show them that it is possible to live morally and rationally in this world. And yet, we all know that those very people, sooner or later, have been known to behave in a manner that contradicts their carefully presented image, if simply in order to prove to themselves that they have some freedom, even a freedom to do what is unreasonable, to prove to themselves that they are not keys of a piano. Like, I'm sure as I'm reading this, you are thinking of people who have, like, literally, like, politicians, pastors, whatever the fuck, right? These people who present this image, right? That they're better than the rest of us, right? Like, there's some sort of pillar of humanity, right? Like, that they deserve to lead you, right? Look at us, we're the light of the world, right? And then they get caught doing something shady, and then you're like, wow, this is what Dostoyevsky is talking about. This is what Nietzsche is talking about. Schopenhauer to an extent, and me. It's what I'm trying to talk about as well, and others. So yeah, check out Civilized to Death, Christopher Ryan. Very interesting read. If you like the book Ishmael, this is sort of a good continuation on that. I would read Ishmael as well, but really, check out Civilized to Death. All right, guys, I got to rest. I've been talking for a while. I will try to record another episode early next week. Thanks for listening. Stay safe.